Now we got
All
four
right,
other
let's get
people.
going. Let's get going. Adam Kinzinger, former member of Congress, you have a lot to say. Until this morning, I thought I knew what we were going to talk about,
Oh gosh.
but then this video posted, this meme, quote unquote meme, posted last night by the White House, the President of the United States, that in part at the end of the video depicts the former President and First Lady Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. I don't know how to say this, but as monkeys. And various people wondered, was this real? It's real. Um, I went to look to see what you had to say about it because I knew we were going to have this conversation. And you got on the stack, as I call it, the Substack, and extemporaneously, with no notes, you did 8 minutes.
Hmm.
And you said at the beginning, I could have written about this. I don't feel like writing articles. I just want to talk. For people who missed that, what is your message to Trump, to Trump supporters, and to the rest of the country about this thing that even a supporter of Donald Trump, Tim Scott, and you mentioned him also, said it was the most racist thing he's seen out of the White House.
hmm It's always interesting because I'm glad Tim Scott said something. Okay, but I know Tim. I was elected with him actually, and what they always do is they'll say like, "This is the most racist thing out of the White House." It's never Trump, right?
Right.
It's never
Right.
Trump. It's, if Donald Trump is throwing Ukraine under the bus, people will say, well, I wish he had better advisors. Like, this guy's an adult. Let's be clear. Donald
Yeah.
Trump is not a kid. He's an adult. And so I spent a little time, obviously, just talking about the outrage of what this is. But I didn't want to waste a ton of people's time talking about just the outrage because we all know it. But the thing that has concerned me, Preet, a lot is, let's think about, let's just say the average person begins to be kind of politically conscious. Let's be generous, 15 years old, you start paying
Yeah.
attention. That means that people that are 25 years and younger now do not ever know a political environment where stuff like this was completely out of bounds and unacceptable.
Yeah. My kids, my,
Your
my
kids.
oldest, my oldest is 24.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. They don't remember that. So we have to keep that memory alive of what politics actually meant to be, what it should be, so that when this guy is flushed down the toilet of history, which he will be, that we can bring that back and ensure that that endures. But the other thing is the damage that stuff like this stuff. First off, he just made it clear with this meme that 18%, what I don't know the percent of the US that's African American, probably around that 18% of the country he doesn't represent, or he thinks down on, or he sees as subhuman, or he sees as monkeys. Now, listen, when you become president, same with a member of Congress, but you swear an oath to the Constitution. And the thing that we have refined over 250 years in this country is that the Constitution is for all people. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, male, female, whatever. And he shows by that he's disqualified to even do that. And what does this do? What does this do to our relationships around the world? Before I went to bed, I saw that the U.S. ambassador to Poland was in a pissing match with the president of Poland over some, supposed slight. I mean, we have a White House right now that is more interested in owning the libs and LOL than they are in real governance, and it's going to cost us huge.
I just want to point out for the historians who may be watching that what you say about the Constitution was not true at the beginning.
Right.
It did not. It did not stand for equality and justice and equal access for everyone, including Black Americans back then. So here's another thing, which may be um, not in the sort of the center of the universe, but you said a few times, and you just said now that he's going to be relegated to the dustbin or the toilet of history,
Mhm.
and you've also said that he sort of knows. And you wrote in a Substack recently, Trump's obsession with revenge is not strength, it's panic. He knows how he will be remembered. He knows the record is set. He knows January 6th will define him, et cetera, et cetera. Is that why you think he's spending so much time trying to secure his own Nobel Peace Prize? Is that why he suggested this week that he would greenlight funding for a tunnel between New Jersey and New York. If I forget what the ask is, if Senator Schumer and others would agree to rename Penn Station after him and an airport. Which airport was it?
Dulles.
Dulles. At least he's respectful enough to Reagan not
Right,
to ask,
yeah, that's
not
a
to ask for
surprise, but great.
DCA. Um, is that why he's doing those things? Because that's the legacy he thinks he can get or that he cares about? Do you really think he thinks he's going to be viewed poorly in history books?
So, I don't know if he sits down and consciously thinks that stuff through. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
one of the things you can say about Trump is he has a very efficient lizard brain. Like his,
Which
uh
means, what does that mean?
it's like, what is it? The amygdala, the fight or flight part of your brain. Like he innately understands how to communicate without realizing it to certain people. He is good. We have to admit, and certain people, he's good at that.
He is.
Um, he can sense fear and knows how to use that fear, right? And so I think when you're a deep narcissist, it's hard to come out of thinking about the moment now, which is why he's so short term. But I do think he understands that the Trump name, the Trump presidency is going to be seen as garbage. And whether he can consciously articulate that or that's just an innate sense, yes, there is only, I think, one, two, three, maybe three reasons, but there's only a few reasons why he would be so obsessed with naming everything after himself is because he wants his name, he wants his legacy to live on. And that's why he's obsessed particularly with relitigating 2020. I'll tell you, Preet, what's hilarious to me, sad, hilarious, sad, is when I was on the January 6th committee, I had Republicans come up to me all the time that I served with that would actually say, thanks for what you're doing. But they go, it's just time to look to the future. And at the time, I disagreed, but I'm like, it's an argument. Trump was nobody at that point. And but now they're obsessed with 2020 because I think he
Yeah.
understands that he gets to write the history book on whether he won 2020 or not, or he gets a chance to write it, and he's trying to write it. He can't be seen as a loser. So, yeah, I think there is a innate part of him that understands that.
You've also written about the weaponization of the Justice Department.
Right.
Here's a question I ask lots of people who are in politics, outside of politics, used to be in politics, may one day be in politics, either for the first time or again. I'm going to ask you this because you were in politics, you took a courageous stand, you stood up against the flag bearer for your party, and you understand how to win races. And lots of people, Democrats among them, are people who would give advice to Democrats. People who hear me know I am very upset with this question. They'll say, to win back the House, to win back the Senate, to win back the White House, you can't talk about democracy.
Mhm.
You can't talk about autocracy. These are esoteric, pie in the sky issues. They're amorphous, they're not concrete. You should talk only about kitchen table issues. Mr. Kinzinger, where do you stand on that point?
I give it a 50% credence. So,
Okay.
on the one hand, I do think leading on and making your campaign solely about the preservation of democracy is probably not a good tactical move, right?
Okay.
Because we all
Fair.
exist on the Maslow's hierarchy. Up here is like self actualization. That is democracy. If people are struggling in the economy, then talk about that. But what I don't want people to do, and this is where I think the message that the advice gets messed up. I don't want people to think they can't talk about it.
Yeah.
When I'm on the trail, man, if I give even a 5-minute stump speech, I'm hitting 6 issues, right? Uh, so you can talk about democracy and touch on it, and God, please, we need it. Because if we're not reminding the American people about the importance of it, they're not gonna remind us about it. Um, and so, yeah, I think it is essential to talk about. I think it's essential to lead on the kitchen table issues, the issues that really that people have a fight or flight fear of at the moment. But on the weaponizing of the DOJ, the thing that's where I would criticize Democrats in terms of messaging, I have a lot of it, but let me just touch on it this way, is,
We
you
can
know
take it.
yeah, is look, Trump talks about the weaponization of the DOJ, so he kind of owns it because Democrats never did, to their credit. But the thing that's very clear to me is not only did Biden not weaponize the DOJ, he did the opposite. He actually had a DOJ that was way too cautious. The January 6th investigation should have started when our investigation on the committee
Yeah.
started, and Donald Trump would be behind bars right now. But I also think Democrats need to make it clear two things. When we take the House and the Senate, hopefully the Senate, but when we take the House, we will be investigating every corruption that's been going on, and we will have hearings about it, and we will call people in. It does two things. It communicates agenda. It also does possibly ward off corruption. People start thinking through, is it worth it? The other thing is in 3 years, when the Democrats take the presidency, we will ensure that anybody that violated rights, violated the law and the Constitution will be held accountable. We are not going to go after the enemies of Democrats or the enemies of the next president, but we will go after the enemies of the Constitution because we have to hold clear on that. And I think it's important for Democrats to also put that out because, again, functionally, it worries people that are about to do corrupt things, but secondarily, it communicates an agenda, fidelity to the Constitution, while you talk about the importance of kitchen table issues and stuff.
Now, there's a problem that is difficult for my mind to get around, and that
Mhm.
is accountability, sort of like the kitchen table issue intersects with democracy, except it's parallel to that. And that is, sometimes it's the case that accountability, judicial accountability, prosecutorial accountability runs up against politics.
Mhm.
And there are people who will say, Donald Trump never should have been indicted. And indeed, people will point out that his reversal of fortune in the polls, at least, began um, on the day that he was indicted in Manhattan. So my question to you is, if Democrats take back the House but not the Senate, scenario number one, and Donald Trump has committed or does commit impeachable offenses, which is almost guaranteed, should Democrats impeach him again? Because it strikes me that the people who say impeachment makes him stronger if it's tried yet a third time, what would you say about that? Accountability through impeachment or leave that alone?
It's a great question. And I'm going to tell you, ultimately, when it comes to impeachment, it is a political question. The
Yeah.
difference between justice is clear black and white law, right? If somebody violates that law, there's a prescription for that. Po- Impeachment in and of itself inherently is a political maneuver. Even if Donald Trump murders 8 people in the White House and the Democrats make the decision to impeach, it is a political decision, right? Because they could also leave him. He's immune during that time. So the answer is not if he does an impeachable offense, should they impeach him? The question is, what is that impeachable offense? And do the American people understand it? I would argue the Russia investigation or the Ukraine situation,
Yeah.
that was an issue that most Americans didn't understand. January 6th was an issue Americans did. If Donald Trump kills 8 people in the White House, I think it would be very wise and prudent on Democrats to impeach him. But if Donald Trump does something that Democrats don't like because it was a Republican thing or it was just another outrage, um, then I think it's politically wise to not, right? Because ultimately you want to impeach with the understanding that you could get this guy out of office. Otherwise, you're making a statement. Now, I personally think his meme that he posted today is an impeachable offense. I mean, I really
Really?
do. When you
Wow.
show that 18% of the country is valueless to you, I think so. Should the Democrats impeach him for that? Probably not. And I'm studying a little bit, like, kind of the rise of Adolf Hitler for no particular reason. Um, and one of the things you see is after the beer hall push, he was put in jail. Everybody thought he was done. And that was the thing that helped him to be more powerful. So we have to do this cautiously. And I think ultimately it's a political decision. And what that line is, I think you'll have to ask me when he crosses it.
Through my peripheral vision, I'm looking at you, making eye contact with you, but I can also see some of the comments.
Mhm.
Someone, not everyone's a supporter here, Adam. Someone commented, "How about we put you libs in prison?" To which I say, hopefully jointly with you, go right ahead. Take
Yeah.
your shot. Take your shot.
Listen,
Put me in prison, my friend.
amen.
Enjoy
Listen
the rest of the show.
to that person, stay here, keep commenting, because listen, you're
Keep
doing
coming.
so much to energize the people that need to be energized, and put me in prison.
Yeah.
I'll be 3 times more effective there.
And if you need legal assistance,
That's right.
I know a guy. I know a guy.
Perfect. I like it.
I was thinking of something when you were speaking a moment ago about accountability and impeachment. There's a principle in the Justice Manual in the Justice Department, and it is not required by law. It's not in the Constitution, but the principle is that one should not proceed with a prosecution unless there's like I forget what the phraseology is, but substantial likelihood of success.
Correct. Yeah.
So that sometimes you have a righteous case, the person is guilty, but maybe you lost a witness, or maybe there's a problem with the law in your circuit or whatever. And the admonition is you should think twice or perhaps not bring a case if you're very unlikely to succeed. Do you think that principle applies to impeachment? Because part of the problem is you kind of know it's a dead letter on day one, particularly if they don't have the Senate. Should that be a guiding principle? Like, don't try it unless you have a reasonable chance of success?
I think, look, I guess I'll say generically, and again, it's going to be situational, but generically,
Yeah.
if it's a righteous case, but it's not, again, I'm going to use the term Donald Trump on live TV killing somebody in the Oval Office, right? Um, then I think you do need to go through what is the political value of this? And there's nothing wrong with thinking of it because, again, it's a political act inherently. Um, if it's something that crosses whatever that threshold is, then I do think even if you're going to lose it, it is important then to move forward because you're making a statement for what the values not just of you are, but the values of the Democratic Party
Yeah.
and the congressional majority. But again, if it's esoteric, if it's kind of not well understood, if there's not a lot, then you have to really go through the is this worth the effort and is this worth the risk?
We want to let people get back to work and or happy hour, but I do want to ask you, and I haven't looked up to see what you've said about your former colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Mhm.
who has discovered, her own truth. Some people say that her change of heart is opportunistic in some way. I don't know. I give her a lot of credit. What do you think of what she's saying and doing? Have you talked to her? Do you embrace her? Are you
No,
skeptical?
I have mixed feelings on this.
Okay.
On the one hand, I really think we need to welcome anybody. I don't want to say out of MAGA because I would still consider her MAGA, but
Yeah.
anybody, having an alliance, it's allying with the Soviet Union in World War II, right? We didn't love the Soviet Union, but we had a common enemy. So on the one hand, I'll take it. On the other hand, though, this is somebody who all of a sudden became very concerned about the death threats when they came to her. I haven't heard her talk about the death threats to Liz Cheney's family, to my
Yeah.
family, threats against my own son, but I also don't wanna make it personal. And so on January 6th, she put out a tweet calling the January 6 people convicted basically political prisoners again. So I look at it this way. I welcome her. I do think there is a legitimate kind of understanding that maybe, I don't know, maybe she found Jesus or something, but we can't pretend like she is now necessarily on the side of democracy because she has made it clear she's not. Her problem with Donald Trump is
Yeah.
he's not MAGA enough, but enemy of my enemy for now is an ally.
Let me ask you this question. Which conversion is more sincere? Marjorie Taylor Greene's conversion away from Trump, or ready? JD Vance's conversion
Oh,
towards Trump. Come on.
you're
Last
killing me.
question. Last question, then you can have a beer.
I would say this probably more legitimate is Marjorie Taylor Greene's because she went to a tougher position.
Right. And
JD
the correct
Vance,
position.
yeah, correct. JD Vance is a complete rollover sissy, and I tell you, I read his book. I knew him.
Yeah.
I thought the dude was
Yeah.
legit, and then power is dangled in front of you, and when it is, you'll throw all your principles out.
Well, that's an interesting answer. I'm going to ask that question to more people because it just
Yeah,
occurred to me.
yeah,
Uh, Mr. Kinzinger, thank you so much for your time, your
of course.
energy, and your contributions to all the thinking that makes people wonder what's going on.
You bet. And
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for you too. I mean, you're out
Well,
there a lot, and I appreciate that, and to
thank you,
everybody
sir.
watching.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Everyone, either back to work or for like 36 more minutes on the East Coast, and happy hour is yours to enjoy.
Have a margarita.
All right. No salt.
Not a salt.